All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere.
For decades, Latin America was often regarded as a relatively distant geopolitical space by most Canadians. Important? Yes. Complex? Certainly. But it was rarely seen as a direct threat to Canada's security or sovereignty. That perception no longer exists. Canada's concern does not stem from Venezuela alone. What has truly put Ottawa on alert is the way Trump is constructing his justification, drawing on doctrines of hegemonic power, speaking in terms of spheres of influence, and treating sovereignty as something adjustable rather than an inviolable principle. For Canadian policymakers, these are not symbolic remarks or rhetorical slogans. They recognize in them a familiar historical pattern. Canada has studied closely what happens when great powers begin to reinterpret borders, consent, and legitimacy according to their own interests. That process often begins with language, is then reinforced through precedent, and gradually becomes normalized. From Ottawa's perspective, Venezuela is no longer viewed as an isolated case. It resembles a test, a place where Trump can gauge the level of resistance and the speed of response from the international community. For that reason, Canada is no longer approaching the issue casually or with superficial caution. It is assessing the situation with the highest degree of seriousness. For many years, remarks implying that Canada could become the 51st state were typically dismissed as jokes, political theater, or shock statements designed to attract attention. Even when repeated, most people believed they were mere performance. That view has now collapsed. Canadian security experts today assess Trump's language with the same seriousness they would apply to military exercises, economic pressure, or other forms of diplomatic coercion as signals that reflect strategic intent. When a leader repeatedly speaks of annexation, imposition, or control over other countries, Canada treats that as deliberate messaging, not spontaneous outbursts. That is why Canada's response is not driven by panic. It is calculated anger. Canadians understand that sovereignty is rarely stripped away in a single dramatic moment. More often, it is eroded over time, through the normalization of language, repeated threats, and prolonged silence. Canada has chosen not to remain silent. These arguments are not new. They have been heard before under different names: liberation, restoration of order, protection of civilians. What Canadian officials are watching, however, is not only what Trump says openly, but also what is missing. There is no consistent respect for the role of democracy, no clear commitment to international legitimacy, and no patience for multilateral mechanisms. Instead, the language increasingly revolves around resources, leverage, and control. From Canada's standpoint, these developments resemble a form of transactional power politics rather than a principled position, an approach that treats states as assets and people as obstacles. History has shown repeatedly that when power operates according to that logic, it rarely stops after achieving a single objective. It tends to expand. That is why Venezuela carries particular significance for Canada, not because of geography, but because of the precedent it sets. Canada's response is not performative. There are no dramatic warnings, no sensational declarations. There are no raised voices, no theatrical outrage. Instead, there is quiet preparation, discreet coordination with European partners, a serious reassessment of military dependencies, and careful study of strategic lessons from modern conflicts, especially Ukraine, where asymmetric warfare, drones, civilian resilience, and rapid mobilization have transformed how conflict unfolds. Canada is re-examining assumptions once considered unshakable, from perceptions of allies and supply chains to deterrence capabilities. This is not a reaction born of fear. It is an approach grounded in reality. Canada is not seeking to provoke Trump. What Canada is doing is ensuring it will never again be placed in a position of passivity in response to his decisions. That distinction is crucial. Canada understands what Trump openly dismisses: Power exercised in isolation leads to weakness. While Trump shows disdain for alliances and downplays international institutions, Canada is strengthening them, deepening ties with Europe, reinforcing cooperation within NATO, and coordinating closely with democratic partners who still believe that rules matter. Canada is not betting on threats. Canada is betting on legitimacy, because history shows that countries acting outside the international order quickly lose influence, while those that remain anchored within it are more likely to endure. And Canada has chosen the path of long-term survival.
It's not going to happen, Don. You have no idea what you've unleashed here. You have no idea of the extent of opposition because you've surrounded yourself with criminal morons. And Donald, quite frankly, you are a criminal moron yourself. You're a narcissist. You're a convicted criminal. If you hadn't lived off Russian dark money for all these years, you would have been bankrupt long ago. And you will be bankrupt again, Donald, because you are driving your country into the ground and making it a pariah on the international stage. As for Canada, we will do what we've got to do. We will continue to build our alliances. We will continue to refocus our economy away from the gangster economy so that we are ready. Whatever happens next, Donald, Canadians will not let you cross the border. Not now, not ever. We will always be true north, strong and free.
The message Canada is sending to Donald Trump is unmistakably clear, even though it is delivered in a calm and unassuming tone. Canada will not be annexed. Canada will not submit to threats. Canada will not quietly accept any pressure that seeks to undermine its sovereignty. The era of relying on goodwill has come to an end. Canada understands that Trump is capable of going very far in his actions, and it is precisely that understanding that has led Canada to choose readiness, early and deliberately, ready to defend itself, ready to stand with its allies, ready to say no, not loudly, not theatrically, but decisively and persistently. Canada is not acting for the sake of sensational headlines. Canada is responding to the lessons of history. When leaders begin to use the language of domination, the countries that endure are those that prepare in advance, not those that ignore the warning signs. Canada believes that Donald Trump will act in accordance with who he is, and for that very reason, Canada is prepared.